There it is. Hey, top fan Jake Sorkis. Um, okay, here we go. Um, hey, Bill, I hope you're well. Thank you very much, Jake. I think it was a little light food poisoning and a fair amount of overwork stress. Any advice for a happy marriage for conservative couples mired in ultra liberal cities? Well, I don't know the answer to the question yet because I haven't read the rest of it, but happy marriage in ultra liberal cities so far, where you're asking the right guy. I feel compelled to let you know that two Strata Loungers, myself and Ashley Rose, are now engaged. I heard about this a little bit. I didn't get the details coming in. Congratulations. Thanks to No Smart to your work and your lectures, both of us former liberals are now conservative culture warriors in the old liberal hellhole, New York City. I was born in the old liberal hellhole of New York City. I think there's some kind of monument there somewhere. It's I don't know. It's a little bit smaller than Grant's, but it's certainly bigger than Harvey Weinstein's. Um, at least we also have a terribly produced stream to watch together on Wednesday nights. Well, guys, I have to tell you, first of all, congratulations. Um, Sincere congratulations. And oh, look at that. There's the happy couple. My gosh. Here's what you and I have in common. First of all, I think, Jake, the first thing that we have in common is not that we're both former liberals and now cultural conservative warriors living in liberal establishments. The primary thing we have in common is that you and I both married up, way up, and so my first bit of advice to you would be, under no circumstances, it's got nothing to do with being in a liberal city. Uh, Under no circumstances ever show her the true amazed face. And if you're one of those people who have married up in the world, as I have, you know what the truly amazed face really is. That's the face you get when it dawns on you who you're actually married to, and how unlikely it seems. So first of all, congratulations on that. Secondly, Jake, it's funny. A lot of times you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need. And I really needed to hear that tonight. To be honest with you, it's just been a treadmill. I know the stuff is important, and at the same time, I have this genuine. It's not false modesty. It's absolutely genuinely true. Uh, this patriotic gentleman I told you about just a few minutes ago drove up here just to have some lunch from San Diego. It's so moving to me, and when people ask me to sign books or sign things, I just want to share this with you guys because it's it's I don't want to say it's an issue for me, but it's kind of an issue for me. Um, Not a negative way at all. There's nothing negative about this. It makes me overwhelmingly pleased and satisfied and joyful. And to be honest with you, Jake, you and Ashley's news have just made my day, week, and probably my month. Um, but I guess what I'm trying to say is. What I'm trying to say, I think, is that I don't feel any kind of wall between you guys and me. I've never felt it. I've never felt the slightest bit of kind of celebrity, privilege or, well, we've talked about this a million times with guys like Bill Maher and so on. If they do a speaking event, they helicopter in, they go out on stage, they do their contractually obligated, 40 minutes, then they are out in the helicopter and up in the air before the filthy hoi polloi gets a chance to mob them, and they take their money and run. I love being the last person out of the room. So today was a real morale builder for me, partially because of the gentleman I mentioned earlier, and I could mention his name, but I'm not going to mention his name and his job at the same time. He knows who he is. So that was exceedingly flattering and nice. But this is beyond flattering and nice. You guys look very happy, and I guess the reason I brought up the whole, kind of autograph thing and fandom thing is you look happy in the Facebook picture, and I get the feeling you're going to stay happy. And you're going to stay happy, I suspect, because you've had an opportunity to stumble upon kind of a pretty simple moral code that it's been my enormous honor to represent sometimes. And it's a very simple thing. It's a very simple code. But I see the look of the two of you on your Facebook page here, and to think that you both met, because of the show, and that that you've got something to do with your Wednesday nights. Perhaps you could get those adding machines, the calculator adding machines, just plus 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 plus. You get a paper tape out of it. I get one of those. You can count the technical errors, but you're going to be much happier than the liberals in New York. Not because you're, I almost said not because you're better people, but the fact of it is you are better people. You're better people now. It doesn't mean you were born better. It doesn't mean that conservatives are born better than liberals or anything. It's just that if you've decided that this philosophy is enough to make you change your mind, and certainly was the case for me, and I discover new parts of it every day, then the more this simple stuff starts to seep in and saturate you, the happier you become. I've said 100 times, and I mean it. It's the most important thing about the history of me doing this work, is that the feedback from the audience, from the get-go, from the first comments that eject, the feedback from the audience has made me into the person I am. It certainly made me a far better person than I ever was. All of that taken together is not as much done me as much good as just a couple of days of being married, but nevertheless, it is really gobsmacking in the best possible way to hear this. I am so happy for both of you. My wife and I met in New York City because I had seen Les Miserables on Broadway a few years earlier. I heard it was about to close, so 3 weeks before it closed, we met in New York, and so that town has a lot of great memories for us too. Natasha came out of the terminal at JFK. I've probably told this before, but I don't care. I love telling the story because it's just so wonderful, so true. And people are making old eject references, by the way, which I miss. I love that banner on eject. If you didn't see it, it had eject, and in the corner was a guy in a ejection seat and blasting off, and the Latin phrase below it was ad astra stella tenante, which means into the heavens by a flaming chair. And as this guy's being ejected into outer space, essentially his little thought bubble comes out and it says, dang. That was really fun. But anyway, back to New York. I was waiting. Her flight was delayed, and I waited outside of customs for almost 5 hours, I guess, when it was all said and done. She was in for 3. And I kept thinking, maybe it could be her, And then she walked out, and I said, "Oh, that's her, definitely." We said hello, and we got in the car and took a cab ride to downtown. And as we were pulling out of JFK, she put her head on my shoulder, and we've been married pretty much from that point. It is enormously gratifying to me to hear this, and I suspect, as I said, you're gonna be happy, because one of the most important things about this whole thing is just getting over the idea that you're God. I mean, that's the biggest part about becoming an ex-liberal, is accepting the fact that you're not God, that there is something bigger than you, and there's something more important than what you want to do right now. There's a terrible kind of a loneliness in that complete liberty to do anything you damn well want to. Needless to say, this whole thing is about freedom. This whole fight's about freedom. If you ask me why I'm here, it's about freedom. But when you've got actual freedom, and you have complete, full freedom paid for with the blood of people who came before us, that freedom and that liberty can turn into licentiousness and simply realizing that there are standards. You don't have to believe that they're divinely inspired. It helps a bit, but you don't have to believe that. It really is not necessary as an individual person. It's baked into the culture, came with everything. If you understand that you're not the center of the universe, your chances of having a successful marriage go a long, long way. And I think you're going to do just fine. I can just tell from this picture. I just love this picture of the two of you there. Hey, you know what? Hang on. Can I? Maybe. Let me try something. Hang on. Here we go. It's going to take a second. But you know, this is what happens if I had a budget. I would just say to the hey, grab that picture, would you, and just put it up on Still Store. Let's see if it'll do it. Let's see if it will. I bet it will. Come on now. Where are you? Look at this. Here's so picture. You're going to make me. All right. Facebook is being very wonky, so I will now use the method I used to defeat all of this, which is to do a selective screen grab. It'll be worth the time, so just hang on 1 second. And I hope I'm embarrassing you enormously. Okay, so there's a picture. Now all I got to do is get it into this thing without crashing. You may see the picture and I disappear and the sound disappear, but just bear with us for 1 second here. I came back because what I was trying to do wasn't working. I didn't want anybody to go away. I'm going to see if there's a way to... I'm still not as familiar with this as I should be because, of course, I haven't had the time to really get to know this, but this OBS software that Foghorn recommended is really good. I'm going to try this again because it's worth the try. So hang on 1 second, and I can't do it while this camera's on, I don't think. No, I can't. So hang on a second. First, the picture. I see levels. I don't know if you can hear me. Let's go to the magic board here and see if we're getting audio. Hey, I think it's working. How about that? Anyway, what an adorable couple, and what enormous pleasure it is for me to be able to to be able to put that up there and share that with everybody, and to let you know what an incredible, unbelievable privilege and honor it is to be. I mean, seriously, people go their entire lives without ever having an experience that comes even close to this. You really have no idea how moving that is for me, and how just mind-boggling it is. And as Cash 18 points out, worst produced show on the internet, and I'm glad to be here. It makes you wonder, if I had an engineer, how many other marriages could we have populated a state by now, perhaps, with conservative, happily married conservative couples? I don't know, but actually, let me spend a few moments answering your actual question, and that is being a conservative couple in a liberal city like New York or California. We talk a lot about courage, and I've talked a lot about sacrifice and my little war stories and stuff. Just before the show, I was reading a real in-depth read back of some of the things that the guys were reporting in real time from Iwo Jima. And so my actual advice to you as conservatives in a liberal town is that there are times when you need to charge over the hill and say, "Follow me, boys." And then there are other times when you need to dig in a foxhole and get as low as you possibly can. And this is going to be your challenge: is deciding, is deciding when to pick your fights. The sad fact, the tragic fact about life in America today, and this is tragic and true, and I live this pretty much every day. In a city like New York, with our friends, the progressives, who are so tolerant of everything except for anything they don't agree with, it will hurt you professionally. It could cost you, it could hurt you very seriously professionally. That's the nature of who they are. I mean, I know when I deal with liberals and progressives, I know they're liberal and progressives, and it just doesn't particularly bother me. It's maybe not somebody I want to hang out and go camping with or something, but nevertheless, I'm aware of their politics. And they have become such a hate-filled echo chamber that if it turns out that you make it known to them in your field of work, or your career field, or even among some friends who maybe you just met casually, they will send you out to the cornfield. And here's why, by the way, so that you don't take it more personally than you have to, although you always take it personally, and I always take it personally, and it always stings, Jake and Ashley. But here's the thing: if you are openly talking about this, even if you say something like, "I think Trump's doing a great job in a restaurant," what you're doing is you are devaluing their entire value set. You're basically poking a hole in their entire belief system, which is why what the left does is it's really not just tragic for the rest of the country, tragic for the people on the left as well. In order to sell this idea, they have to drum it into people's heads all the time, and no dissenting voices can ever be heard, because if there is a dissenting voice, then the whole thing falls apart. Great example, which I got from my friend, the Border Patrol agent today. We're talking about families being separated at the border, and how cruel it is to separate families, how terribly cruel. What kind of a monster, must Donald Trump be in order to rip families apart like this? And he said, the reason that we separate the children is so that we can send them home with their moms. The reason we separate them is not so that we can keep them in special dog cages. The reason we separate families is we don't want to detain the entire family and keep them all in prison until we find out what the hell's going on. We separate families so that families can stay together. It separates families so that not the whole family has to go to this internment for breaking what they knew was a law the entire time they were en route here. And little tiny little things like that just destroys the entire progressive worldview. It just falls apart, comes apart. I saw a meme that said, it was a picture of a little South American girl, looked like a Colombian girl. She was behind like a kind of real thin cage, like a dog cage or something. And she was crying, and she had her hands on the bars. And it was a liberal meme. And below that it said, even conservatives would have to agree that we're better than this. You know, here's this poor little 2 or 3 year old Ecuadorian or Honduran girl crying, locked up in jail by herself. And you see this and you start thinking, wow, you know, I gotta admit they're really making a pretty good point here. Maybe they're right. But this was a conservative meme, and below that picture of that crying girl, they showed a wider picture, and it turned out that was not a cage at all. It was a flat piece of like one side of a dog cage that was freestanding in the middle of a room, and there were 25 or 30 children walking around on both sides of it, and they identified the girl because the clothing matched, the face matched. No question it's the same girl. And she's kind of happily going around back and forth, and they're playing, and there's this thing that's set up there for the photo op, and then this girl gets behind the cage, and maybe she stubbed her toe, or maybe somebody gave her some, you know, bad acid or whatever, and she's in this cage crying. They go in and crop this image. And so everything that they base their belief system on isn't true. If it was true, I'd have a different opinion, but it's not. It's not true. And we see it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. We don't have, Donald Trump is not paying people to join Antifa and smash windows. But John Podesta was paying people to go to Trump rallies and start fights. The evidence of what they believe has to be manufactured because it's not there, which tells a sane person that if the evidence isn't there, I shouldn't believe in it, but that's not what they do. So look, anytime you open your mouth, guys, it's not just a question of a political disagreement or a change of opinion on things. You are threatening their entire worldview. And as somebody who went through this back 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, when it was far less traumatic than it is now, I mean, the divide I had to jump over was a relatively minor divide. I could openly talk about wanting to be a businessman when I considered myself a liberal. I openly talked about loving America, loving the military. I wasn't banished to the nether regions because of this. Most people didn't agree with me, but they were actors, and what the hell do they know about anything? But the chasm that you guys have had to jump today to move from one camp to another is an indication of how destructive this philosophy is for people. And so you will have emotional reactions to coming out, and it's what it is. As conservatives, you will have emotional reactions that will be way out of proportion to anything that you may say or do. And the reason that it'll be so aggressively out of proportion is because the simple fact that presumably we're talking about either friends or coworkers, right? And you go to a job and people like you and you're doing a good job and a nice looking couple and they're obviously very smart and very intelligent because they work in the same place as I do and they do the same work that I do. So obviously they must be intelligent because I'm intelligent and I work here anyway. And so this person has this opinion of you and thinks highly of you in a casual sort of way. And then you find out that this person voted for Donald Trump. And then that person, the progressive, is stuck with having to make a choice. Either intelligent people can vote for Donald Trump, or you're not as intelligent as I originally thought you were. And 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 people go with B. I guess this guy is obviously a closet Nazi. I got this from my own family, you know. I got this from my own family. Not my inner family, but cousins and things of people who I had spent my entire life with. And all of a sudden I get treated like I'm, you know, Eichmann. And it's not just infuriating. It goes way past infuriating. It's eviscerating. It's just simply it's so bloody hurtful because aside from the obvious surface hurt of having people who you cared about and loved about and who presumably felt the same way about you, aside from the obvious fact that, that stings, I just can't believe that people that have known me since I was born now think that the Huffington Post knows more about me than they do. That's pretty much it. They think that that the Huffington Post knows more about me than they do. They grew up with me, but since I'm a conservative, and conservatives are evil, I must be secretly evil. So that's the bad news, and there's not a whole lot of good news, but there is some good news, guys, in terms of the culture thing for you, and then we'll get a couple more questions out of the way. And that is this: along with all of the opprobrium that comes with being like a conservative, known conservative, you are also going to find winks and nods in the strangest of places. The strangest places. You're going to find people who are like you and they understand that this is the world. And we kind of let this thing get into this state, but you can't undo it now. Certainly not one person. You're stuck with it. So I would just say choose your fights. And I would finally just say this. If you have friends or people who you think are friends or family members that you care about, and they decide to excommunicate you from their lives because you voted for a different person than they did, then you don't need that person in your life. It's a great saying. Those that matter don't care, and those that care don't matter. So just keep that in mind. And I'll tell you with absolute certainty, I know Natasha and I will be getting back to New York at some point. I would hope in the next year, but it's certainly at some point we'll be going back. And it would be a great pleasure to buy you guys a drink on the town, because this kind of thing is just unimaginably cool and unbelievably refreshing. So anyway, thank you, and thank you for pointing it out there, guys. And congratulations to the two of you. We'll go one more time to the happy picture in case somebody came in late. Was it in scene 2? Yep, there we go. Hey, look at that. A couple of Strata loungers getting married because of yours truly and yours truly, which is the main reason that this show is so interesting, is because we have such great questions and comments. So let's have a quick look at what we've got here.